If you are creating an 8.5 by 11 flyer with tearaway tabs, you should follow the setup for 8.5 by 11 full bleed template video and then move on to this one. So this is picking up where that other one left off. So I have a 11 by 17 canvas with a 8.5 by 11 object set up with an 1/8 inch of bleed and a 1/4 inch inside of the trim is our safe guide. Now, first thing you need to do is decide where you want your tabs to be. I've seen them done on the bottom, I've seen them done down the side, I've seen them done on a horizontal object, either down the side or on the bottom. So I'm just going to turn this, let's see, what do I want to do? I think I want to turn this one so that it is on its side. So I'm going to go to Image, Image Rotation, 90 degrees clockwise. First off, we need to put together one of what's going to get torn away. So I'm going to create a white rectangle box and figure out how many of these I can set in a row. And the way to do that is put it right up to the edge of where you're going to get trimmed. And I'm going to set the opacity just a tiny bit lower to like 80%, and then hold down Command and Option and Shift all together, because then you can click and drag. Oh, I'm getting this message because, why am I getting this message? Because I'm not on a layer. Here we go. Command and Option and hold down and drag. And I'm going to drag these till I can just see a little hairline left between them, which is why I lowered the opacity. Now I keep doing this, but I'm actually going to make this even easier and use a repeat transform command until I get the many I need. So Command J to duplicate, Command T to transform, and then do that same thing that I just did, was move it exactly how much I want, and then hit Enter, and then I can hold down Command, Option, Shift, T to repeat transform. And look at that, I actually eyeballed this really close. So I'm going to grab all of these layers that I made, because each time I did that it made a copy of a layer, and then transform, Command T, and stretch it out just that little bit to reach the edge. Okay, so I know that's how many I have and where kind of my edges are going to be. This is my guideline, so I'm going to actually flatten all of these layers together by hitting Command E to merge them and call this my guideline and put a lock on it. That way I know right where those trim comes. So I'm going to set up the type on one of these. So let's say I'm just going to do some generic stuff here just to fill it up. So event name, date, time, place, and a contact number. I'm just duplicating my type field so I don't have to re-rotate anything or and if it costs something, I would say, you know, $5. And if you felt like being really fancy, this could even be a coupon. You could add other information there. However much information you need to cram in onto one of these, you would take that into account when you're making the size of it. So I don't really need tons of information, but what I do need to check is that this stuff is readable. So the font size on my event name is 1862, which is great, but the size on this other stuff is really small. It's only 6.83, which is too small. So I'm going to select my two small layers and change that to maybe about 9. Oh, I grabbed the wrong thing. Let me grab the right layers, my date, time, and contact numbers, and then I'm going to just double click on the type and change that to 9. And like with everything else, I want to make sure that things are nice and set up tidy, so I've made both of my types flush left and line up, and then the 5 is kind of out here centered on its own. Now I need to duplicate this information over and over in each one of these, but if I create multiple layers for all of that and then decide I need to change one of them, I'd have to go back and change all of them. So the easiest way to do this would be to have a smart object. So I'm going to pick everything that is going to be repeated, so all of that text, and then right click out here on one of the layers and choose convert to smart object. And now I can take that object and duplicate it and move it down and center it in each one of these little areas. And I'm just eyeballing it. You can do whatever you need to make sure that it's the right way. I'm holding shift down when I move things, which is keeping all of this stuff even. If it helps you, you can drag out a guideline to help keep things even. And I think I even have my Snap to option on, which you can turn on by going to View and turning on Snap. So the reason I use Smart Objects is because then if I want to change something on this, all I have to do is double click once on one of these thumbnails and I could change the name. And save it, Command S, and close it, Command W, and it will update all of those right immediately. Okay, so but for print, we don't really want kind of this awkward white in the background with these lines. What we do need is some lines that will show you where to cut so that people can tear off. So I'm going to make a new layer, grab my pencil tool, which again is over here under your brush. So if you click on your brush, you can hold the pencil tool and get a black line, and I'm going to set it to, oh, maybe, first off, I guess I need to get a brush. I think right now it's on a leaf brush. Get just a round brush and set it to maybe 3 or 4 pixels wide, and let's see how that looks. And I'm going to zoom in here and create a line right where those overlap. I actually want that line to go all the way to the edge, but it was catching on this guideline, so I want to just maybe hide my guidelines for a second by hitting Command H. That way it won't try and catch on them. Okay, that's a cut line. There's a bunch of different ways you could duplicate this. You could copy your layers, you can drag a select box around it and then hold Command Option, which is what I'm doing, and then hold Shift down when you're moving it. Command Option will make it copy without actually making a new layer now that it's selected. That's one of those little things you just kind of have to get used to in Photoshop. If this wasn't selected, it would be making a new copy for every layer. So every layer, every time I copied, I'd get a new layer. But because it's selected, it's not going to do that. And I don't need to put one over here on the far edge. That's good enough. So these are my tab lines. And then I'm going to get rid of or hide my awkward little guideline thing down there. And at this point, depending on whatever your design is, if you wanted to use the blue as your background, or if you felt like you wanted to put white behind there, that's great. You know, just kind of whatever you want to do. Whenever you do design, remember you have to keep your tick marks so that they're showing. In my boxes I have, or in my layers, I have all of my layers inside of a layer mask that's keeping that all clean. So that's how that's working. Anyway, that's how you create the tabs on your flyer, and then all the flyer information would go here. And obviously there's a lot left up to you about how big to make these and what information is going in them. So make sure that it's readable, make sure the type is a readable size, so don't go any smaller than 8. And as far as spacing things, remember, keep in mind that this outside 1/8 of an inch is going to get trimmed off. And just a reminder on short keys to copy and duplicate. If you hold down Command Option and then click and drag, you'll duplicate. And if you need to turn your guide lights off and on, you can hit Command semicolon to turn them off and on. And that's how you would set up tabs for doing a 8.5 by 11 full bleed tab tearaway flyer.